the Canadian government appointed a minister who could dictate to businesses about how the hours they worked and how much they produced and what people got paid. So the government's getting a lot more involved directly in the economy. So it's kind of a continuation of the Great Depression. And part of that was also to control greed and inflation and make sure that people were behaving responsibly. They wanted to make sure that there was enough food to go around, especially as it was needed so much in Great Britain. And so one of the things they do is control the distribution of food. So they introduced rationing, yet another red word. It's a definition word. You should be highlighting it. You definitely need to know it. So to make sure there was enough food to go around, especially for all the soldiers that would be needed in Great Britain and all the civilians in Great Britain, they started rationing food. Now, things that are highly needed, obviously, for soldiers, like meat and butter, they needed. Gasoline and rubber for all the planes and trucks and tanks and everything, absolutely. But also things that could not be produced easily in North America. So tea does not grow here, coffee does not grow here. We have to get it from other places, so we have to ration it because it's harder to get because of the German submarines. Clothing, because it's harder to get because they're making from natural fibers like cotton, silk, linen. They don't have the synthetics yet. So silk was needed for parachutes. That was in high demand. So people were very much restricted on buying less, especially in Great Britain. Eating less meat became a lot more vegetarian-based diet, but also growing their own food, preserving their own food, recycling old clothing into new clothing so that they're not buying new. So very much of restrictions. And that's actually a really interesting topic if someone wants to do it for a research essay, is how rationing impacted people's behavior in diet and fashion and all that sort of stuff. So you can see here we've got a rationing poster in the grocery store, and it says half a pound a week per person of sugar, because sugar can't be grown in North America. We have to get it from Central America and the Caribbean. Tea is half of the usual purchase, and coffee is 3/4 of the usual purchase. It's easier for us to get coffee because it's coming from South America, so it can be over land rather than over boat. And when people showed their dedication to the war effort in their foods that they're growing, in their recycling, in planting gardens, in composting, everything that they could do to try and help out the war. So there's a lot of propaganda to try and encourage people, but some of that will remain longer term, and that comes also from the Great Depression of we don't have any money, so we're making do with what we've got. People could grow their own food. They're putting in more vegetable crops, wheat, corn, whatever. They're recycling more, which came out of the Great Depression, especially when it comes to fabric. But everything they could do was seen to improve, it'd be better for the society, and that would end the war faster. And that's going to continue. It's going to look different, but the fact that the government today is encouraging us to recycle and to compost and to bring our own grocery bags, that's all coming back from World War II. So the fact that the government is involved in our daily life is very much dates back to World War II. Similar to World War I, many governments needed financing help to fund the war effort, and so they actually looked to their own civilians. They sold victory bonds. So this was Canadian citizens could invest their money. You've got $100, you'd buy a $100 bond, and then several years later, usually about 7 to 10, you would get guaranteed interest. And that meant the government was borrowing money from its own citizens rather than from private banks or other countries to finance the war effort. So this was so popular, they raised $12 billion. So it gives you an indication of how much money Canadian citizens are investing. So they're doing very economically well during the war. Okay, this is always fascinating. And in a lot of these topics, I'm just trying to give you indications of things that you could research more in next week or after spring break if you're interested. We had a secret spy camp in Canada. It was to train British and American as well as Canadian spies to go in behind enemy lines and spy on things and disrupt things. They also intercepted coded messages between Germany and Britain and everybody, and they decoded them, and that's where we get Hydra. So there's your reference to Captain America. It was in Canada because it was considered safe because the Germans couldn't spy on us. So, and unfortunately it was dismantled after World War II, but it's also where the man who created James Bond was trained there, and so a lot of the ideas for James Bond actually come from there. So now I'm going to send you to watch a preview for a Canadian-made series based on this.
We are up against a ruthless, relentless enemy.
Come here!
And the truth is, we are losing this fight.
Well, we get closer to the big bomb.
And that's not a race. We want to come in second.
Down!
No, sir. Please.
They elected the bastard who started this. They love him. They're gonna slaughter that village for him.
Hi, Lisa.
If you lower your arm, we will shoot you.
The U.S. is joining the war, but they have no foreign intelligence.
We're the only spy training facility in North America. We train assassins, code breakers, saboteurs.
Bang!
We specialize in unconventional warfare, which is why we need unconventional warriors like you.
Is it true that he remembers everything he sees?
The brain is cross-wired. One sense is actually fused to another.
Halt!
It takes me a whole morning to get the guts to go out for groceries.
Then why did you enlist?
I want to serve.
Green light, come on, everybody, let's go, 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 go!
Our first team is in the field right now.
Shoot them! Shoot them now!
I won't lie to you, survival rate in the field is 50%.
And I wanna come home to you.
With D-Day and the liberation of Netherlands and several others, by the 30th of April 1945, the end is in sight. Hitler realizes that Germany is going to be overtaken, so he, rather than face a trial or being demeaned or being embarrassed, he commits suicide shortly after marrying his mistress, Eva Braun. He gave strict orders that his body was to be burned so that his enemies couldn't do what they'd done to the leader of Italy, which was to kill him, hang him upside down naked, and throw eggs and tomatoes at him. He didn't want to be demeaned, right? He wanted to maintain his appearance and as he was shown in his propaganda. In May 1945, Germany surrenders. The Soviet army competes with the Americans to take the city of Berlin, and they end up dividing the city down the middle. As a result, after World War II, there will be two Germanys, an East Germany, which is communist, and a West Germany, which is democratic. So you might have seen this very famous photo of a sailor celebrating the fact that the war is over. And some people consider it was a good war for Canada too. It made us a great nation. It showed us what we could do. We weren't just a bunch of wheat farmers and Nova Scotia fishermen and lumbermen in BC. We were a nation, a big and tough and strong nation. So you can see by the end of World War II, Canada had 42,000 casualties, which is a huge number. But in comparison to other countries, nowhere near as large. Even when we look at this graph compared to our population, and a lot of these large numbers are due to the Holocaust. So Poland, Soviet Union, Yugoslavia, Germany, a lot of that is the Holocaust. But even compared to other countries, the Philippines, Italy, United Kingdom, Canada is much smaller in terms of our casualties compared to our population because of the type of role that we had, because we were so far removed, we weren't being attacked ourselves, all of that. And then, of course, it also comes into technology. This was less of a war of fighting hand-to-hand and more about bombing from a distance and shooting from a distance, whether by tank or by plane. But we did huge contributions in terms of humans, but more in terms of economics, of producing and shipping off goods and people and food to the war. right? We had followed Britain into war, but we were a major player. There's no question now about our autonomy. We had one of the largest navies in the world, one of the largest air forces in the world at the end of World War II, huge in comparison, and we didn't have the reconstruction costs looming as the European countries did. It also led to more integration. Many troops were recognized for their contributions, unlike with World War I. So we have here on the left-hand side, you've got Sergeant Tommy Prince from the Ojibwe Nation, and he earned medals of bravery from the United States, Britain, and Canada, and yet died penniless because of how the Canadian government treated him afterwards. Similarly, Chinese Canadians served in the military and were seen as huge contributors because of their ability to speak native languages when fighting in Asia. Black soldiers because of their willingness to volunteer and contribute. And that's going to lead to more civil rights in the 1950s and an increase in voting rights. So all of these groups, in terms of Indigenous Canadians, Chinese Canadians, and also Japanese Canadians, are not able to vote in Canada at this time, but will all gain the right to vote after World War II.